Now today we are going to start with a new chapter number 7. It is structural organization in animals. How the different structures gets organized in animals. So today we will discuss the chapter number 7, structural organization in animals. You know that we have studied that living organism, the basic component you can find in the living organism is the cell. Now this cell, they combines together, it forms a tissue. So what it leads to form it? It leads to a formation of tissue. Now this tissue they combine together, it leads to a formation of an organ. And this organ combines together, it form an organ system. So we have studied that this level of organization that exists into a living organism. Cell is the basic unit of any living organism, which unite to form tissues, which unite to form organ, and which unite to form organ system. Now we have studied regarding this cell in the chapter number 8. Now in this chapter we have to learn regarding the tissue arrangement, how the tissue gets organized, because variety of tissue are going to be formed or they are organized in case of an animals. So today we will learn regarding this tissue. So let us first start with a definition of a tissue. What is called as a tissue? So let's start with the first definition, tissue. So what is a tissue? Tissue means it is a group of cells. What it is? It's a group of cells, okay, which having common origin means they arises from the single type of a cell, because you know that we are diploblastic or triploblastic. So they either arise from the same layer, either ectoderm, endoderm or the mesoderm. So they have a common origin and common functions. Clear? So this is called as a tissue. So what is a tissue? Tissue is a group of cells which is having a common origin and the common functions. This is called as a tissue. Now we have to learn this tissue in case of animals. What different kinds of tissue you can find in the animal, that we have to discuss in this. So first we will discuss regarding the tissue organization in animals, and then we will discuss the organs and organ systems. They are present in different types of animals, specifically in the earthworm and the frog. So this is what we have to learn in this chapter. So first of all, to learn all these things, first of all we should have a knowledge of this tissue. What kind of the tissue that is present in the animals. So in the animal, there are 4 types of the tissues can be found. How many types of the tissues can be found in the animal? There are 4 types of the tissues can be found in the animal. Okay? So which are the 4 different types of the tissue can be found in animal? And you know that human are also animals. So in human also same variety of the tissue can be found. So these are the 4 types of the tissue that is present into an animal cell. Animals. First is called as epithelial tissue, or you can say I'm writing epithelial. Okay? It's epithelial tissue. The second one, it's called as connective tissue. The third one, it's called as muscular tissue. And the fourth, it's called as nervous tissue. So how many different types of tissues that can be present into animal? 4 different kinds of tissue can be found into animal, including human. Epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscular tissue and the nervous tissue. We have to learn regarding each kind of a tissue. Today we are going to start with this kind of a tissue first. It's called as epithelial tissue. So today we will discuss regarding the characteristic of this epithelial tissue. So till now you are clear about this. What is a tissue? Tissue is a group of cells. That means tissue is made up of many type of cells which is having a common origin and the common function, that's called as tissue. And these are the 4 different types of the tissues are present. Now let us start with the first kind of a tissue, what we are calling it as epithelial tissue. So now I am going to start regarding the epithelial tissue. So let's go with the first epithelial tissue. This epithelial tissue, what is another name of this epithelial tissue? It can also be called as epithelium. Okay, you can also call it as epithelium, or you can also call it as epithelial tissue. Generally, it forms the outer covering of the different organs, okay, or it forms the boundary. So let us first discuss what is the location where this kind of an epithelial tissue or epithelium is from. This epithelial tissue, it forms the lining of organ. It forms the lining of organs. Okay, so various organs, their lining, their boundaries, they are made up of a such kind of a tissue that's called as an epithelial tissue. Okay, so this is the location you can find. Even if you see the skin, the first layer or the outer layer of the skin, that is made up of an epithelial tissue. So it is a kind of a protecting in nature, and this tissue, it can perform the variety of the functions. The usual functions which are performed by this epithelial tissue are, so what are the usual functions it's performed by? It is a protective in nature, means it is a provide a protection. Second, they are also involved in the process called as absorption, okay, by a process called as diffusion. Here they are also involved into a secretion, and the last function, they are also involved into an excretion. So these are the four functions can be found: protection, absorption, secretion, and the excretions. These are the functions of epithelial tissue or the epithelium. Okay, so this is regarding the general information regarding this epithelial tissue. Now this epithelial tissue, okay, this epithelial tissue can be divided into two types. How many types of epithelial tissue? There are two types of the epithelial tissues are there. What are the types of this epithelial tissue? The first one, it's called as simple epithelial tissue. The first one is called as simple epithelial tissue. The second one, it's called as compound epithelial tissue. The second one is called as compound epithelial tissue. So how many types of epithelial tissue? Two types: simple epithelial tissue and the compound epithelial tissue. So what is a simple epithelial tissue? Simple epithelial tissue, it consists of single layer of a cell. How many layers of cells are present? Single layer of cells are present. Okay, in case of simple epithelial tissue. But in case of a compound epithelial tissue, two or more than two layers are present. How many layers are present? Two or more than two layers are present in case of compound epithelial tissue. So this is epithelial tissue which consists of two types: simple epithelial tissue and the compound epithelial tissue. In the simple epithelial, there is just a single layer. In the compound epithelium, there is two or more than two layers are present. Okay. Now this simple epithelial tissue, based on the type of cell or based on shape of a cell, more specifically, based on shape of a cell, this simple epithelial tissue can be further divided into different types based on the shape. So the usual types of this simple epithelial tissue, it's called as cuboidal epithelial tissue. The second one, it's called as squamous epithelial tissue. The third one, it's called as columnar epithelial tissue. Here the shape gets changed. Okay, it's called as third one, it's called as columnar epithelial tissue. Okay, even few are also classifying at the fourth one, it's called as ciliated epithelial tissue. Clear? So these are the four different types of simple epithelial tissue. Okay, in this cuboidal epithelium, squamous epithelium, columnar or the ciliated epithelium, there is a difference. Basic difference is the shape of a cell. Otherwise they all are the simple epithelial tissue, means they all are made up of a single layer, just it forms a one layer. Okay, so this is called as a four different types of simple epithelial tissue. So first of all, we will discuss the each type and then we go ahead with the next type. It's called as a compound epithelial tissue. We are going to start with the first one. The name itself suggests cuboidal epithelial tissue. Cuboidal epithelial tissue, then you can know that it is a kind of a simple epithelial tissue, means made up of a one layer, but here the shape is cube-like. The shape is cube-like, three-dimensional. If you see it, it's a cube-like shape, and that's why we are calling it as cuboidal epithelial tissue. In every tissue, you just have to remember three important points you have to remember. One is the shape of a cell. Second one is the location where it is present, more specifically. And the third you have to remember, it's a function. So here if you see about the cuboidal epithelial tissue, it's like a cube-like. So that's why we are calling it as cuboidal epithelial tissue. Now, this cuboidal epithelial tissue, where it is present, they are present into a ducts or the glands. Okay, like you can see that it is present in the duct or the glands of salivary gland, or it is present into a proximal tubules, lining of the proximal tubule. It consists of a cuboidal epithelium cell. So this is the location where it can be found. Usually they are found into the ducts and the glands, and hence it performs the two functions, the two important functions. The first one is called as absorption, and the second one they are involved, it's called as secretion. These are the two functions which are involved in this cuboidal epithelial tissue. You have to frame the sentences and then you have to write regarding this. So if you see it or if you observe the diagram of this, they are cube-like arrangement of a single layer of a cell, what we call it as cuboidal epithelial tissue. The second type of a simple epithelial tissue is called as squamous epithelial tissue. So the squamous epithelial tissue, it consists of a flat cells. They consist of a flat cells. Like you can say that it is kind of like a tiles, or it is a kind of like a pavement, as it is look like a pavement when you observe from the top. So that's why this squamous epithelium is called as pavement epithelial tissue, because when you observe it from the top, it's look like the tiles or the pavement, like a block. When you observe the block from the top side, similar kind of appearance that is with a squamous epithelial tissue. In this squamous epithelial tissue, the flat cells are organized where one cell is connected to another cell from edge to edge, like you are observing in the tiles. Every edge is connected to another edge, every edge. Similarly here also, the edge of cell is attached with another edge of a cell. Okay, clear? That means one edge is connected with another edge. Okay, this is the characteristic of a squamous epithelial tissue. This squamous epithelial tissue, where it is found, it's present into blood vessels, or even it is also present into a air sac of lung. These are the usual location where you can find this squamous epithelial tissue. Okay, so I hope so you are clear with this first two types of the simple epithelial tissue, cuboidal epithelium, and the second one is called as squamous epithelium. Now we are moving ahead with the third kind of a tissues, simple epithelial tissue. It's called as columnar epithelial tissue. So when you observe this columnar epithelium, the cells of these are the tall, like this. They are present on the basement membrane. This one is a basement membrane. It's called as basement membrane because they lie on the support, and this support is called as basement membrane. So if you look regarding the cells of this, they are the tall, means the length is more than the width. Length is more than the width. This is the characteristic you can find in the columnar epithelial tissue. So such kind of characteristic you can find in the columnar tissue, and here it is a cell contains a nucleus. So the nucleus is present at the base. Where it is present, the nucleus is usually found at the base. So this is called as a columnar epithelial tissue. Now where it is present, this columnar epithelial tissue is present into an intestine, the wall of an intestine. It contains this columnar epithelial tissues which is very long. Even it is also present into a stomach, okay, or it is also present into a tubules of nephron. So these are the usual locations, okay, where these columnar epithelial tissues are present, and it is also involved into a secretion and the excretion of a substance. There are two functions. One is the secretion and the another one is a excretion. So these are the two functions of a columnar epithelial tissues. Okay, so that is about the third kind of a columnar epithelial tissue. Now the fourth type, it's called as ciliated epithelium tissue. So what is a ciliated epithelial tissue? Ciliated epithelial tissue, the shape of the cells in the ciliated epithelium is either cuboidal or columnar. Means the shape of a cell is like cube or column, okay, like a pillar. But what is in addition it has, like suppose it's a columnar, it has a small hair-like structures that found at the free surface of a cell. If it is a column-like, then shape is like this, or if it is a cube-like, then at the cube like this. Such kind of a cells are present. On the free surface there is a presence of hair cells. Okay, so these hair cells we are calling it as a cilia. What we are calling? Cilia. So as the cilia is present on the free surface of this cell, we are calling it as ciliated epithelium. Okay, what we are calling? We are calling it as ciliated epithelium. Where it is present? It's present into a trachea, or it's present into a primary bronchi. In the trachea, they help in the removing the cough material, because the ultimate function of this cilia, they form or they show the uniform movement like this, uniform movement, and with the help of this uniform movement, they help in the transportation of various material. Like the cough that comes out, okay, that means it travels in the opposite direction of gravitation. How it goes, how the cough comes out from the lung, because here these particles, hair particles, or cilia, they help in the movement of that cough and or mucus, and due to that it will come out. So this is called as a trachea. And those who are regular smokers, or those who are the chain smokers, where due to a smoke or due to irritant property of this smoke, the cilia gets damaged and they have a difficulty in the removing the cough, okay, or the mucus generated in the lung. So it is present in the trachea. Even it is also present into a fallopian tube. Fallopian tube is the female reproductive organ. Okay. Here they are also responsible for transport of ovum or the egg cell. So this is the location, trachea and the fallopian tube, where you can find this ciliated epithelium. Okay. And the function, that they help in the transport or the movement of particles or material. So this is the function of ciliated epithelium. So these are the 4 different types of simple epithelial tissue: cuboidal epithelium, squamous epithelium, columnar epithelium, and the ciliated epithelium. Okay, so this is about a simple epithelial tissue. Now the another kind of epithelial tissue is the compound, that do not consist of one layer. It consists of many layers. 2 or more than 2 layers are present in the case of compound epithelial tissue. So let's discuss regarding the characteristic of this compound epithelial tissue. In the compound epithelial tissues, I am writing the compound epithelium. There are 2 or more than 2 layers are present. Like suppose this is a basement membrane. On that there is a 1 layer like this, cells. This is on the 1 layer there is another layer, because it's a compound epithelium, means it do not contain just a 1 layer. It contains 2 or more than 2 layers. So this is the 2nd layer. Suppose assume that this is the 3rd layer. Okay, so 2 or more than 2 layers are present in it. So such kind of arrangement you can find into a compound epithelium. And here the real purpose of this is the protection. The upper layers are usually gets wear and tear, or it gets damaged. So the damaged cells, these are the upper surfaces which can easily damage. Like see the skin, it can be easily damaged. So these cells which are damaged, that can be replaced by the cells which is present below it or beneath it. Okay, so this is the characteristic. They are responsible for protection. There are many layers, and as there are many layers, they are responsible for protection. Okay, so this is a characteristic of compound epithelium. And where this compound epithelium can be found? The compound epithelium that is present in the organs like a skin. It is also present into a lining of vagina. So it's present into a vaginal lining. These are the usual locations where you can find this compound epithelium, or where there is a more wear and tear occurs. where there is a more wear and tear occurs, like for an example the buccal cavities or vaginal linings, where there is a more wear and tear occurs, where there is a more friction, like the food that is passing through it. So the food, a friction of a food with this lining that damages the cell. Okay, at that side this compound epithelium are present. So this is regarding the different types of epithelial tissue. Simple epithelial tissue, and the second one is called as compound epithelial tissue. Okay, so that is about the simple and the compound. Now we are moving ahead. You know that there are few glands which also have the epithelium tissue, and their function is to secrete something. Okay, either they secrete the chemical or they secrete the juice, and their linings they are also made up of this kind of a tissue. This is called as epithelial tissue, and based on that there are two types. So I am just discussing what are the types of it. So let's discuss regarding the first type of this epithelium based on secretions. Based on secretion, the initial classification is based on the shape of a cell. Now it's a epithelium based on its secretions, where it secretes. There are two kinds of it. First one is called as exocrine glands, and the second one is called as endocrine glands. Both are made up of these epithelial tissues. Now this exocrine, what is called as exocrine? Exo means out, endo means in. So here they are the glands, they secrete. Okay, so here they secrete their whatever the material in the ducts, okay, or in the tubules, they secrete. Okay, so this is called as an exocrine glands. And the endocrine glands, they secrete their blood, their material directly into a blood or the fluid which is present inside it. Okay, regarding this we will learn in the last chapter. It's chemical coordinations and control. It's an endocrine glands. They all are the endocrine glands. But in this chapter we will learn regarding this exocrine glands, which secretes the secretions into a ducts and the tubules, and they are made up of epithelial tissues. These exocrine glands can be of two types based on number of cells, like unicellular exocrine gland, and the second one it's called as multicellular exocrine gland. Unicellular name itself suggests this kind of exocrine gland, they are just made up of a one cell. Like for example, I am giving you example, it is a goblet cells. Goblet cells, it secretes the mucus. Okay, goblet cells, it secretes the mucus. Okay, they are kind of a unicellular exocrine gland. And the example of multicellular exocrine gland, the example is salivary gland. Salivary gland, it's called as multicellular exocrine gland. Okay, so this is the characteristic you will find, or these two different types of glands you can find, which consist of a epithelial tissue. Now, when these cells are present, these epithelial tissues, they are present nearby to each other. So there is very minute gap is present between them, or there is no gap is present. Like see, I am showing over here. Suppose it's kind of a columnar epithelium. So see here, this is a one cell, this is another cell, there is no gap. Like suppose this is a third cell. So when between these two cells there is a no gap or such kind of a very minimum gap is present. Very minimum gap is present or no gap is present like this. Okay? And that means one cell that remains in the attachment with another cell, and this is called as cell junction, where one cell meet with another cell. This is called as cell junction. Like commonly what we are calling, when one road meets with another road, we are calling it as a junction. Similarly, when the one cell meets with another one, it's called as a junction. But here one cell is meeting with another cell, we are calling it as cell junction. So, how many types of the cell junctions are present? There are three types of the cell junctions are present. How many types of the cell junctions are present? 3 types. The first one, it's called as a tight junction. Okay, the first one is called as tight junction. The name itself suggests it's a very tight, there is no gap. Okay, clear. And the second one is called as adhering junction. Adhering junction means it's somewhat loose and it is kind of a cementing material. It is acting as a cementing material. And the last one, the last kind of a junction, it's called as a gap junction. Here somewhat a larger gap is present. Here no gap, very tight attachment, generally which is meant for protections. Adhering, or you can say it prevents a leakage. I am telling you it prevents a leakage. It's a very tight junction. There is no space in between them, so it prevents a leakage. Adhering junctions, it is acting as a cementing material between the two cells. And the last is the gap junction, where there is somewhat a larger space comparable to these two. So it's called as a gap junction. Look like a gap, okay? And it is helpful in the communication between the cells. It is responsible for communication between the cells. So these are the different types of the cell junctions you can find between the epithelial tissue. Okay, so this is regarding, today we have discussed the first kind of the tissue that is present in the animal. It is called as epithelial tissue. The next kind of a tissue, connective tissue, we will discuss this connective tissue in the next session. Till then students, keep learning, keep watching, like and subscribe this channel. Thank you for watching.